So in this video, I want to talk about Putin's reasoning, his rationale, why he is not coming to a ceasefire. And there's not going to be a truce anytime soon because Putin can't take a truce. I'll explain my entire case. Just stay with me to the end. So first, Putin's reasoning. Remember, it was supposed to be a 3-day or a 3-week blitzkrieg into Ukraine. And so they would take the country in 3 days. Zelensky would flee and then mop up for 3 weeks. And then you'd install a puppet regime. But it didn't work out that way. What he actually wanted were puppets, kind of like what you see here with Fico and Orban, people that will just do his bidding. He doesn't actually want the real estate as much as he wants people that are loyal to him in his sphere of influence. And that's all that he actually needs. But he needs to change leadership because, like, what he actually got when he was trying to push in 2014 was the Maidan Revolution. He didn't want this. And he's trying the same trick in Georgia, and it's not working there either. This is Georgia today as they're having their allergic reaction to Putin's puppet government. And he sure doesn't want Zelensky, that's for sure. Like, Zelensky is exactly the opposite of what he wants. He wants to replace Zelensky. So you saw him try to do that with the rhetoric about how Zelensky is he's not really, like, he's violating the Constitution. He's not really an elected president, all those kind of things, because he wants Zelensky out. Okay, so with all that being said, he doesn't just want a slice of Ukraine. He's not after, like, trying to keep this land. I mean, he wants to keep this land, but he wants to keep all of this land, that is Ukraine. He wants to control that. If he either wants to control it by having somebody in power that he can control, or by controlling it outright if short of that. Okay, so the question is, can he actually stop? Like, at what point can he actually stop? Well, he can't stop here. I'm like, he could. Like, let's say that there was a ceasefire. He could say, okay, I've locked in my gains. Here, I have all these 4 new oblasts on top of Crimea. And so, all right, that's good. But that's not satisfactory. Now he's going to need a buffer zone around here to keep the bad Ukrainians from coming after him, or so he will say. He could lock in his gains, but that's the positive, or he could try to lock in those gains, because it looks like the Trump administration, for example, is kind of favorable toward that. But if he does lock in his gains, what happens? There's economic turmoil that will be created on the other side of demobilizing a wartime economy, both militarily and economically, shifting back to the private sector. All the dislocation will be bad for him. Soldiers coming home who are very violent and have nowhere to go, that's going to be bad for him. He didn't achieve his full-out goals, although he could lie about that. He controls the press, but that's going to be bad for him. But what he really wants to avoid is a color revolution, somewhat like what you're seeing here, or what's possible to happen here in Georgia. So he doesn't want that at all. Now, Putin's not ready for a ceasefire, may bend by fall, says a former U.S. envoy. Okay, let's say by the fall, but I don't think he's going to do it anytime soon. And I don't think he'll do it unless he's pushed to do it. And why? What is Putin's calculation? So if you think about it, there's a reason that it doesn't make any sense for him to quit right now. What's in the plus column and what's in the minus column? Okay, plus column, Trump. Trump is not calling him the aggressor. Trump is saying both sides need to stop. There's like this moral equivalency that's not really helpful for Ukraine, and he can just ignore it. Like, Putin can just ignore that. 2, Witkoff. Witkoff is just carrying his message and just magnifying his message. 3, disunited Europe. Although it looks like they're starting to get together, you'll see that in the 3 big stories segment tonight, it has generally been disunited. And part of that is thanks to folks like Fico and Orban, who are carrying the water on that. Okay, so there's also potential for all kinds of positive gains. If he just stays in place and just holds on and keeps going, he could lock in more gains. And then finally, if he's going to build a legacy as Vladimir the Greater before he passes, and he has to expand Russia. And so those are all the positives, and it's potential if he keeps going and he doesn't come to a ceasefire agreement. Now, what's the downside? Well, the downside, if he comes to a ceasefire agreement, is that there could be U.S. and EU sanctions. And that's possible. And it's been threatened, but it's been threatened again and again and again and again and again. And this is the 16th package of sanctions, and there'll be a 17th and an 18th. And so what, right? But it's also possible that there's increased arms that will flow from the EU and the US to Ukraine and other places as well. Okay, that's a potential downside if he doesn't come to the table. There's also the possible of long-term economic dislocation. And then with that, with the turbulence in the economy, he could, I mean, like it's degrading slowly as it is, but a sudden ceasefire could create a big turbulence, and he could lose power or his life, and he certainly doesn't want a color revolution. Okay, so that's what's in Putin's calculus right now as he's trying to think, do I want to come to a ceasefire or not? And so the answer is no, he does not want to come to a ceasefire. Now, he also understands, and this was a headline in the New York Times, that Europe can't do it alone. Without U.S. support, Europe won't be able to supply Ukraine with enough weapons. So he's gambling on this, right? It could take European manufacturers a decade to scale up, making U.S. aid critical for now. And he understands that. And the Europeans have talked a big game so far, but they haven't actually put their money where their mouth is. And then there's also a mentality that the Russians have, that the Soviets had, that the Russians still have, that they haven't shaken. So here's what I mean by that. Yesterday was the May 9th parade. May 10th is when the victors of World War II became the victimizers of the Cold War. And so if you were in the Baltic states or Poland or Eastern Europe, like May 10th should be commemorated as victimized by Russia Day. I mean, that's really what this amounts to. And the mentality hasn't changed, to the point that here's Darth Putin posting, my favorite thing about trolls is that we didn't do Bucha Massacre, but we have t-shirts saying we want to do it again. This person's actually wearing that t-shirt. Like, what kind of mentality is like that? And then, okay, the problem is that Nuremberg, the Nazis had to face Nuremberg, right? The Japanese had to have unconditional surrender. The Soviets never had that kind of thing. Russia needs a German-style reckoning with its past. Simply returning to the territory will not solve the underlying problem. Like, if you just return the territory that you took from Ukraine, give it back to them, and you return to your own territory and say, okay, we're done, we're not going to do this again, they'll do it again. I mean, that's what's going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of looks like this, where it's the Z is kind of the new swastika, and that's just, yeah, where they are. Now, Kaya Kallas was talking about how every inch of Russia's war has been documented. It leaves no room for doubt, no room for impunity. And today they're taking a special decisive step toward justice by agreeing to a special tribunal. Now, this is above and beyond the other war crimes trial in The Hague. This is going after the leadership. And so we'll talk about this. This is their announcement about this thing. And this is what it amounts to. Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Alan Berset, has made the following statement for the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. And that's different than the other things. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. The European Court of Human Rights is examining thousands of cases of alleged human rights violations resulting from Russia's aggression. And we've made the plight of Ukrainian children our own. And that's good. We are providing the framework for a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. This is the moment for states to follow up on the political will that they have shown today. Justice also needs resources. Funding must be secured and the necessary support provided for the functioning of the future tribunal. The special tribunal can help shape Ukraine's future for generations to come. Okay, so what is this? Why is a new tribunal necessary? Is the International Criminal Court not already handling this? Okay, the ICC has jurisdiction to investigate war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide in Ukraine. However, it currently lacks the legal authority to prosecute crime of aggression, in this case due to jurisdictional limitations for the crime of aggression. So you need a special tribunal for this, and that's what they're working on. The special tribunal will be complementary to the ICC. It'll still be in The Hague. What exactly is a crime of aggression? The crime of aggression is when a state's leaders launch a plan or war. It's considered a leadership crime, meaning it concerns those in positions of power who made or facilitated the decision to go to war. And this is another reason that Putin just won't quit, because if he does quit and he has to face this, he is either going to jail or getting killed or being out of power or whatever else if he actually winds up before this body, which seems unlikely that he would leave his own country and wind up before that country or before that tribunal, but that makes it even less likely. Okay, just a couple more things. Today, Macron's announcing this. We have just decided, all of us here today, with the 20 or so member countries and the coalition of the willing to support a ceasefire that will begin next Monday with no preconditions to the ceasefire, either on the part of Ukrainians or on the part of Russians. Will Putin take it? Absolutely not. Why would he take that? Like, what incentive does he actually have to take that kind of deal? Look, here's why. Look, let's look at this. In the event of a ceasefire violation, we agree to massive sanctions, right? Okay, so I can either not do the ceasefire and I'm just where I was before, or I do the ceasefire, then I violate it, and then I have additional massive sanctions added to me. What's the upside for him? So he's not going to do it because just understand his incentives and it all makes sense. And the mentality hasn't shifted. Here's the borders of the USSR from 1938 to 1948. Here it is in 1938. Here it is as annexed or expanded through World War II, and then after World War II, as the whole Warsaw Pact being under the Soviet thumb. That's the expansionistic mentality, and that's the root cause. And until that goes away, nothing will change. Now, this is interesting. This is NATO, original NATO, and in 1952, 1955, 82, 90, 99, 2004, 2009, 2017, 2020, 23. Okay, now why does NATO keep expanding? Because these countries in Eastern Europe particularly don't want to be under the Soviet thumb, but the Soviets, they just can't help themselves, or the now Russians, who are the inheritors of the Soviet Union, they can't help themselves. They're just going to keep doing that. All right, I'll leave you with this. Darth Putin saying Russia is a peaceful country surrounded by ceasefires. Yeah, that's the way he sees it. So going back to the original question, why no truce? All the incentives line up to keep Putin from actually coming to a truce. There's nothing that benefits him at this point, nothing until he is forced to come to a ceasefire. All right, my friends, thank you for your time. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Thank you for the time, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.